what had begun with high spirits as a bold excursion for the mercenary army of 10,000 Greeks, venturing far into the Persian Empire under the banners of an ambitious rival to Persia's throne, had now turned into a desperate struggle for survival. With dangers on every side, food grown scarce, and vast lands that trapped them from a safe return home. The past weeks of the year 401 BC had seen the fateful Battle of Cunaxa, where their Persian leader Cyrus had met his end in a glorious but foolish charge in the very face of the king. And worse still, as the Greek mercenaries were left with no cause to pursue and no orders to follow, a trap laid by the Persian king Artaxerxes and his agent Tissaphernes had tricked the Greek commanders into imprisonment and death. Recalled in the memories of the young Athenian named Xenophon, who had traveled with the army at the invitation of a friend, the fortunes of the 10,000 soldiers were grim. Isolated in their camp in the heart of Mesopotamia, their prospects were bleak. In one path lay captivity or death at the hands of the Persian Empire. In the other lay an arduous journey through unforgiving terrain, with no promises that all or any of their comrades, as numerous as a marching city, would endure the test. But their decision to pursue struggle over surrender, trusting in their own resolve and each other, would begin with Xenophon himself, who saw a vision in the night. Amid a restless night of sleep, there appeared to him, in a fleeting dream, the house that belonged to his father, and with a booming clap of thunder, a bolt of lightning struck the house and set it all ablaze in a flash of rolling flames. Xenophon stirred awake in fear, and thought back on the dream to try and search it for meaning. In one interpretation, he saw hope, that the thunder and lightning, symbols of the god Zeus, were present even here and would lend them strength. But in another, he saw a destruction for himself in the way ahead, caught in fire with no escape. But Xenophon had learned from his teacher Socrates to question assumptions, to look deeper in pursuit of truth, and so he determined to find the meaning of the dream in action, realizing that doing nothing would lead to his and the army's demise just as quickly as anything their Persian enemies had in store. And so he rose from his sleep and found others awake who served under his old friend Proxenos, now lost to the Persians' ruse. And mustering all his passion and training in the arts of a practiced orator, he rekindled the pride of his comrades. He told them that they had no need to fear the Persians, whom they knew to be cowards and traitors, that they could travel light through the countryside and cross rivers where they were most shallow, burning their wagons and tents and relying on what they could find on the way to provision themselves. Now was the time for action, to secure safety for them all. They should appoint new leaders to replace those they had lost, and trust in their discipline and their will to get them home alive. With stirring words, Xenophon won the support of the men, and soon the whole army had appointed new officers, Xenophon as one of them, who would lead the 10,000 out from the lands of Persia to freedom and the blue sea. They took to the road again, crossing the great Zab River in the march up country, wary of Tissaphernes' forces. Persian horsemen made swift attacks against them, hurling spears and firing arrows into them before disappearing into the brush. But the Greeks regrouped and fought off a detachment of 4,000 Persians with cavalry of their own, backed up by slingers who pelted them with a deadly rain of lead bullets. Day by day the march went on, and they repelled relentless assaults from Tissaphernes at every hard-won step, relying on might and strategy, and they replenished themselves at villages they happened upon along the way. Xenophon's respect among the soldiers grew as he proved himself a dedicated and capable leader. Once, during their march, the 10,000 saw on the horizon the crest of a tall hill, which they had to cross despite the enemies who occupied it, holding the high ground. Xenophon and another commander, a Spartan named Cheirisophos, debated their course of action, where leaving themselves open to attack seemed unavoidable. But another, taller mountain loomed over the occupied hill, and Xenophon recognized that ascending the higher ground was the key to gaining the crucial hill for themselves. They had to seize the mountain as fast as they could, a rigorous task. Xenophon put the question to Cheirisophos whether he preferred to lead the charge upon the mountain or stay with the camp, and the Spartan simply put the question back to him. As the younger man between them, Xenophon's answer was the choice to lead. Breaking off with a strong force from the head of the army, Xenophon at once began the rugged climb up the mountain. The Persians on the hill saw what was happening, and detached a group of their own to intercept the Greeks, pitting the two sides in a race for control. Xenophon spurred on his men from horseback, reminding them of their wives and children, the life that awaited them on their return home. When a soldier from Sicyon named Soteridas mocked Xenophon for riding a horse while he had to lug his heavy shield up the mountain on foot, Xenophon leapt from his steed, grabbed his shield away, and shoved Soteridas aside, taking his place among the infantry and shouting out for the men to quicken their pace, shouldering the shield himself. At their speed in the climb, Xenophon's troops outpaced the Persians and won the high ground, allowing the whole army to pass by in safety, as the Persians fled from a position now made indefensible by the quick action of the Greeks. Beyond here they found villages abounding in food and fertile ground, but then they came upon the impassable flood of the Tigris River. They were unable to cross under pressure from the Persians, and so continued on the eastern side up toward the land of Armenia. On that path lay the vast and rugged mountains of Corduene, populated by the Kardukoi, mountain folk whose toughness had resisted even the mighty hand of the Persian Empire. The Greeks endured withering attacks. Boulders rolled from the summits to crush them from insurmountable heights. But they discovered the hidden ways through the crags, fended off their attackers, and saw the march through to the Armenian plains that lay beyond. But winter was upon them now, piling frigid winds and snow onto the challenges faced by the 10,000. They crossed the shallow headwaters of the Euphrates, but endured lethal frostbite, hunger, and biting cold as they trekked on, with the enemy still nipping at their heels to force them onward. Desperate for food in between settlements as starvation loomed, they tried to take resources from the tribe of the Taukoi, who retreated into a mountain stronghold with their livestock, forcing the Greeks to climb up after them. And so they made the grueling ascent, while the Taukoi from above hurled down stones to break the climbers' bones. The Greeks tricked them into casting away all their stones by faking advances and then retreating behind trees, and when the horizon was clear, they made a fierce charge up to the fortress. But the Taukoi wouldn't suffer their own capture and pillaging by the Greeks, and in a horrific sight, they began throwing themselves from the cliffs to their deaths, women throwing their children and then themselves, the men grabbing hold of Greek foes and dragging them over the edge with them to be dashed against the rocks far below. When the carnage ended, the 10,000 had few prisoners, but a wealth of provisions and animals to continue the upland march. When they left behind the land of the Taukoi, the Greeks passed through the home of the Chalybes, and then of the Scythenoi, and a view they hadn't seen in what felt like an eternity, a great and bustling city named Gymnias, on the bank of the Harpasus River. Here they knew that civilization and the sea were growing near. And when they met with the head of this great city, he supplied them with a guide who would show them the way to a hill just 5 days' journey away, where the sea and their escape would be in full view. In this anxious final stretch of the march from Babylonia, as they passed through Anatolia toward the Black Sea that would deliver them back to their homes, the 10,000 had more challenges to fight through, as the guide led them into conflicts with groups hostile to the Scythenoi. At last, the hill named Thekes rose from the land, and the Greeks took to its slopes in fraught expectation of what they would see from the top. When they reached the summit, Xenophon was at the rear guard of the army, fending off enemies who pursued them, and the air all around was broken by the sudden clamor of men crying out, which met Xenophon's fearful ears. Imagining that the front of the army had been attacked, he wheeled his horse around, and trusting the last throes of the skirmish to his troops, and sped up Thekes hill at a gallop to find the source of the noise. And when he did, it wasn't the familiar scenes of death, deprivation, and hopelessness that met his eyes, but a picture of rapturous joy. The waters of the Black Sea, their pathway to beloved Greece, glistened in the sun, and all around were shouts of triumph from the men who had suffered countless hardships to reach this summit. One word rose into the sky, born in the cries of thousands at once. The sea they had found at long last. Yet more adventures remained as the road through Asia Minor to Greece stretched on before them. But the imminent doom that had loomed over the army ever since the death of Cyrus and the betrayal of their commanders had passed, and the heart of each man in the army of 10,000 swelled with new pride. They had faced down the impossible, and left behind a feat whose like the Greek world had never known before. And through the memoirs of Xenophon, their triumph would become timeless, inspiring listeners with a tale of danger and survival, of comrades lost and bonds forged in battle, and above all, the courage to never give up.